Hey everybody, Matt Johnson here. Happy to be with you live as we talk about a big day in true crime and a really big case that is just blowing up and probably in your social feeds against this guy, singer David, otherwise known as his real name, David Anthony Burke. You know, he's facing a lot of charges there in the great state of California, including murder, tampering with evidence, and a lot of other disgusting allegations that we'll get into. But really what we should be talking about is this little girl. She went missing for quite a long time, and who was searching for her? Where was she? You know, how did she end up there? And what do authorities have to say about that investigation and why it took so long? She was allegedly found in David's Tesla, chopped up in the back. And we're learning a lot more from the autopsy report. It's gruesome, it's gross, but we have to talk about it so that we can get this girl justice. Here to help break it all down is actually one of my good friends who you know very well. Julia Jenaé, who is a practicing attorney, Emmy Award-winning journalist, community volunteer, and former Court TV anchor. How are you doing tonight?
I am doing great, Matt. It is so good to see you. This podcast looks so good on you. I can't stop watching it. I can't stop watching.
Well, thank you for being here, because I know that this is a case that you've followed for quite some time. And there has been some huge developments, right? Especially today. He was supposed to be back in court today, which he was, but we really didn't learn anything new. Today was supposed to be the prelim after the initial charges, after he was arrested and his first appearance, which happened earlier. We were supposed to learn more details today about all of the charges, because the defense was pushing for that, right? They were pushing for having everything out in the open. But then today's hearing, according to the judge, was going to be with no cameras. And then all of a sudden there was new information, and they said, actually, we're going to postpone the preliminary hearing. So what are your thoughts initially before we get into the evidence?
Yeah, this case is one of those that I have been waiting on pins and needles for something to develop. I mean, there are cases that stick with you, and we're uncomfortable as journalists wondering, is there ever going to be a resolution? Is anyone ever going to be charged? Is someone going to be found? And in this case, I kind of was left just with this cliffhanger. And you know that the family of Celeste Rivas Hernandez has been agonizing over what's going to happen. Is someone going to be held responsible for the death of our little girl? And the news has just been, it's almost been rapid fire, right? We first saw his arrest last week. We then saw the announcement of those charges at the beginning of this week. The coroner releasing that cause of death and manner of death for the first time yesterday. And now you're mentioning that evidence that is coming out about what was found in his phone. So it's just one of those cases we've been holding our breath for a resolution on. And everyone can just say almost together when they see the headlines in this one, finally, it's finally here.
Yeah, you know, and we'll get into the timeline, which is right here on your screen right now. We'll get into this in a little bit later, but I want to go back in time to the huge development that we saw just a couple days ago when he appeared in court. And I want to play that. And you have to also notice his body language in all of this. I mean, I'm constantly talking to Susan Constantine all the time, and I know you are too. And, you know, just the body language and what he showed in court. And, you know, it's just very eerie. But we're finally at the stage where we're in a legal process in all of this. And of course, he's cloaked in the presumption of innocence, and he has claimed his innocence with these charges, which we'll get into. But let's first watch for our viewers as we get caught up what happened in court.
In her plea of not guilty, denying any and all special allegations, enhancements, and priors.
Yes, Your Honor.
And you're requesting a preliminary hearing within the period.
Yes, Your Honor. From the media reports, apparently there have been 4 months of secret grand jury proceedings. We believe that Mr. Burke is entitled at the earliest opportunity to an open preliminary hearing, and the proceedings not be done in secret. So we are asking for a preliminary hearing to be set at the earliest possible date on the 10th day. Your Honor, we believe the actual evidence will show David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, nor was he the cause of her death. And we would like to be able to have the evidence come into the light of day at the earliest opportunity in order to establish that.
Okay, so first off, Take us to law school. You know, grand jury proceedings, they're always in private.
That's not special. She added the word, these secret grand jury proceedings. Grand jury proceedings are always secret. We
Right.
don't know who the grand jurors are. They don't announce. I mean, I've sat outside of courtrooms. I know you have too sometimes, Matt, when we get tipped off that a grand jury might be convening. And the people involved are very close to the chest about what's happening. So sometimes we're all just waiting for, is there going to be an indictment or a no bill? So that's not uncommon. However, in this case, there is this lengthy 7-month investigation where he's sitting waiting, and he may not know anything about what's going on. His defense doesn't have a right to be there like in a normal situation. Some people may not know that. A grand jury proceeding is all one-sided. The prosecution brings in their witnesses. They could call more people, but they call the people they want that they think is going to get them that indictment. And here the indictment never even happened. We did not see his arrest come because of an indictment. We saw it come because the police developed probable cause. So they've got these two roads that they can go down. They could still get an indictment later. We may see that. But this arrest didn't happen because of a grand jury indictment, which, you know, it's not unheard of. It's not that unusual, but I was surprised. I thought it would take a grand jury indictment in order to bring in David Burke.
Yeah, you know, I thought that it, like a lot of people, I just have so many questions as to if he was ever a person of interest leading to a suspect, why it took so long for the arrest. Like, seriously, like this little girl had gone missing for so long before, and then her remains are found in a registered vehicle. I mean, and I'm not even sure if he had been brought in for questioning after that.
We know only from the reporting from his own attorney, Matt, that he was cooperating with police. Now, LAPD didn't come out and say anything about this case pending the investigation. And you can speak more to this, having done so many reports and investigations out in LA, but they're pretty close to the chest there. They don't talk a lot to the media. They don't tell you when the investigation is starting or have press conferences all the way through like we sometimes see in smaller counties. But we understood from his attorney that he was cooperating. And I think the fact that he wasn't arrested and they felt comfortable having this lengthy investigation while I guess he's at home, that could suggest that he was doing everything that they asked at that time. They simply didn't have the evidence, and that could be a challenge for the prosecution. And that defense attorney sounded really, I mean, they always sound confident, right, when they are talking about their client being innocent. But it sounds like even with the push for the preliminary hearing, that there may be a defense that they put out in front of the public very soon.
Yeah, and are you surprised that the prelim was pushed to next week, the last week in April, the first week of May, because of new information or evidence in the case? And we'll get to the motive, but the evidence in the case that came to light today, according to the defense team, is all of the images or child porn that was found allegedly on his phone. So is that normally something that would push a prelim? I mean, that's not the murder charge.
It's not the murder charge, but he is also charged with lewd and lascivious behavior, lewd acts rather, against a person under the age of 14. So it's essentially sexual misconduct with a child under the age of 18. And it's tied to that murder case because the prosecution, Nathan Hochman, he said that's the reason that this all happened, because of that relationship and him wanting to cover it up. So am I surprised? I think I'm more surprised that they were pushing so hard at first and then didn't expect something like this, because that's what a preliminary hearing is. It's the opportunity for the prosecution, not opportunity, but really the defense gets this opportunity, demanding that the prosecution lay out everything that they have to get that probable cause to support the case. And that gives the defense the opportunity to know everything, but it seems like maybe they were blindsided that there were these images. And we also have to be careful about the definition, because anything, even a picture of the victim in this case in a way that is sexual in nature at all, would be considered child pornography. So we will see what comes out at that preliminary hearing. So I am surprised they pushed for it, not surprised that they are now pushing that date back.
And I'm kind of surprised that they say that they're just learning about this, because according to Nathan Hochman's office, the district attorney in the great state of California and Los Angeles, when she was threatened to expose his criminal conduct and devastate his musical career, Burke allegedly murdered her. That's the motive, not that they have to prove that, according to prosecutors in this case. So, and what was she going to expose? We're going to learn later after that statement that it was something to do with their sexual relationship and the child abuse and child porn. So, I mean, you have all of that as this motive there for these charges. But I do have Nathan Hochman's press conference that we can watch together. And he kind of dives into the charges and also the special circumstances, which I wanted to get your take on after we hear about this.
Today, I am announcing the charges against David Anthony Burke, the musician known as David, spelled D4vd, in connection with the brutal and horrific murder of Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time. These charges include the most serious charges that a DA's office can bring. That is first-degree murder with special circumstances. The special circumstances being lying in wait, committing this crime for financial gain, or murdering a witness in an investigation. These special circumstances carry with it, along with the first-degree murder charge, a maximum sentence of life without the possibility of parole or the death penalty. The determination on whether or not the district attorney's office will seek the death penalty will be made at a later time. Before I get into the actual charges, and there are additional charges against Mr. Burke, including continuous sexual acts, lewd and lascivious sexual acts with an individual under 14 years old, and mutilating a human remains of a body. Before I get into the description of these charges and their seriousness, I want to look at this as a parent. I am a parent of 3 children, and a parent's nightmare is a situation where your daughter goes out one night and never comes back. As we will show in a court of law, and what I also want to make sure about that the understanding of these charges is clear, is my description of these charges is not evidence that we are going to present in court. These charges, in fact, will not be evidence in the court. Evidence will be the witness testimony, the documents, and different types of admissible testimony that we will admit into court in the prosecution, and if it leads to the eventual trial of Mr. Burke, to convince a jury of 12 people beyond a reasonable doubt that each and every one of these charges is true, as well as the special allegations and circumstances that have been alleged. Now, back to this being a parent's nightmare. On April 23rd, 2025, as been alleged by the complaint, Celeste, a 14-year-old at that time, went to Mr. Burke's house in the Hollywood Hills. She was never heard from again. On September 8th, 2025, as alleged in the complaint, Miss Celeste remains, her dismembered and decomposed remains were found in 2 bags inside of a front trunk of a car registered to Mr. Burke. Thereafter began an investigation. The investigation was to determine who killed, who murdered Celeste months and months before. That investigation was carried out in unison and in partnership between the LAPD's Robbery Homicide Division and the District Attorney's Office. At every point in the investigation, through the arrest and the filing of charges, the LAPD and the District Attorney's Office have worked in lockstep. There's been no disagreements amongst these entities in deciding how to proceed with this case, ultimately leading to these charges today. So what you have as well with these charges is that, again, there are 3 sets of charges that have been brought. The first-degree murder with special circumstances, and again, those special circumstances are lying in wait. that Celeste went to Mr. Burke's home on the night of April 23rd, 2025, as alleged in the complaint, at his invitation, and again, was not heard from again. The second is a special circumstance being that this murder was committed for financial gain. As the evidence will show in court, the financial gain was for Mr. Burke to maintain his very lucrative musical career that Celeste was threatening on that particular night. The third charge, in addition to lying in wait and for financial gain, is murdering a witness to an investigation. In this particular case, as the evidence will come out in court, the witness to the investigation was Celeste. And the investigation was into the lewd and lascivious sexual acts committed by Mr. Burke that is the subject of count 2 of this complaint with Celeste while she was under 14 years old. I had the chance to meet with some of the family members of Celeste, and their grief is incalculable as to what happened to their daughter. What they have demanded, what we have assured them that the district attorney's office working with LAPD would give them is the proof beyond a reasonable doubt on who killed their daughter, on how their daughter was killed, when their daughter was killed, and bring that killer to justice. That killer that we have now charged is David Anthony Burke.
Okay, so right there, first off, I think it's a really interesting interpretation of the law. I've never heard of a special circumstance killing for financial gain when it wasn't something in the nature of like like them getting money, by a spouse dying or something like that, like this was financial gain that he can keep his business going, that he can continue making music.
Yeah, I think it is a unique way to look at it, but I definitely think it works and can be proven in front of a jury, because if he stood to gain a certain amount of money, and if she came forward to say, look, he's been in this illegal relationship with me, if that would ruin his career and the financial amount that he would get from that career, I absolutely see it as something, if they can prove it, that would have been for financial gain as an aggravator here. I mean, it was eye-opening, because I think a lot of people want to know, why would this have happened? Even if he was in this relationship with her, why all of a sudden did that end in murder? And Nathan Hochman is laying out what he says they can prove in court, that there was this moment, it seems, and maybe we'll learn more in this preliminary hearing when it happens, but it seems like there's this specific moment where he is worried she actually will come forward, which, Matt, it just seems strange because she allegedly would have been in this relationship with him for over a year. So what changed at that point is still something that I think the public doesn't have a full grasp on.
Yeah, I agree with you. And, and I also agree with you. It's a relationship that never even should have taken place. It's disgusting to think that that was happening. She's a young teenager. She should have never even been in that situation. I agree with you 100% on both of those points. And the other one was lying in wait. So I want to hear more about what sort of evidence that they have about that.
Yeah, and where they got this evidence. This 7-month, not even putting him behind bars, really makes me wonder what they have and when they put it all together. Who they have, who's maybe changed their mind about talking and ended up talking after 7 months. But perhaps they have in the digital evidence. We heard Nathan Hochman say they have physical, digital, and forensic evidence. And perhaps the digital may lay out something that was texted, that was shared. But about the lying in wait, I mean, that's without video. Sometimes that's hard to know that someone was waiting for the person unsuspecting. I mean, you almost get this image in your mind of someone in the bushes waiting for someone to show up. But no doubt if they used that as an aggravator when they didn't need it, because they already have the other 2 aggravators, they didn't need that to get to first-degree murder with special circumstances. So to put that in there, they must have at least one line of evidence that suggests that there was that element of this plot to kill.
Well, I'm wondering if it is video evidence, because having been in the Hollywood Hills reporting, maybe a few parties, but reporting for most of my career
Do
in
tell
Los
for a
Angeles.
different podcast.
Yeah. I know that a lot of people have security cameras and those Rings or the Nest cameras, and some of that has been out in the public, but we only see a little drop in the bucket, what's been reported so far, from what I would imagine. So the lying in wait, I'm waiting to hear more information about that. I'm hoping that that's part of the preliminary hearing, if that's made public. I'm hoping that there are cameras allowed for that. But what this does is it lifts it not only to life without the possibility of parole if convicted, but possibility of the death penalty. But that's kind of like a moot point in the great state of California, because, there is really no death penalty at this point in time.
Yeah, there's that moratorium on it, but I mean, he said it for a reason, and
He loves to say it.
And it doesn't mean that his office can't seek it, even if the person
Right.
never gets executed. So I think this might be one of those cases, Matt, that he goes ahead and seeks it and gets a conviction on it. It's going to make for a much more expensive trial, a much more lengthy trial. It's already going to be harder to seat a jury. I'm confident they will be able to seat a jury if there's a trial, but it'll be harder than normal because this case has gotten so much attention. But then you make it even harder when you try to find jurors who can be impartial in a death penalty case, but still go through those factors. I've watched that part of the jury selection. It is an added difficulty to find jurors in a death penalty case.
So one of the officers, the chief, got up there and spoke, and he kind of addressed a lot of questions that are on everyone's minds. That was in that same news conference. So I'm going to put that on our screen, and we're going to watch that together.
Throughout the 7-month investigation, this department has faced criticism for how we handled the case and for our decision not to provide details. I want to be clear about something. My duty is not to fuel speculation. It's to deliver justice, and that requires patience and discipline on everybody's part. This investigation was driven by a single purpose: to secure justice for Celeste Rivas and for those who loved her. We had to be certain that nothing we did or said would ever jeopardize this case. Ms. Rivas was a reported runaway from Riverside County. During the course of our investigation, detectives learned that she had been involved in a sexual relationship with Mr. Burke when she was a minor and he was an adult. On April 23rd, 2025, Ms. Rivas arrived at Mr. Burke's home in the Hollywood Hills. That's the last time she was known to be alive. On September 8th, 2025, Ms. Rivas's dismembered and badly decomposed body was discovered in the front trunk of Mr. Burke's impounded Tesla. From that moment forward, our investigators faced an extraordinary, difficult, and complex case. The condition of her remains delayed the medical examiner's ability to be able to determine cause of death. The substantial amount of time that passed between her death and the discovery meant that crucial evidence had degraded or disappeared. And as detectives worked to uncover the truth, they also had to sift through and debunk a great deal of false information circulating publicly. These challenges were real, and they required patience, precision, and an unwavering commitment to the facts. Despite these obstacles, and despite intense public pressure, our Robbery Homicide Division detectives remained steadfast in their duties. They recovered and analyzed a substantial amount of digital and forensic evidence. They stayed focused, disciplined, and committed to uncovering the truth. Their work, in close collaboration with the District Attorney's Office, has brought us to this moment today. I want to thank the District Attorney and his team, as always, for their partnership. This case demanded coordination, persistence, and a shared commitment to justice. Also, thank you to our media partners for showing up today and for sharing this important message with the public. And finally, to Ms. Rivas's family, we cannot undo the pain you are feeling. Our hope is that today brings some measure of accountability and a step in the journey toward healing. Please know that the Los Angeles Police Department remains fully committed to seeking justice on behalf of your daughter. Thank you.
Okay, so what stood out in all of that to you?
You know, it's a difficult position to be in as law enforcement when you are getting hammered with questions on a case like this. So I think he handled it the best way of explaining why they had to wait this long. And I think you also have to highlight that it's not just us in the public who didn't know what was going on in this investigation. Celeste's family were in the dark too. And I know that's part of how you have to do it. They don't want anyone to have too much information so that they may tip off someone. But that's excruciating to be a family member, a parent, a sibling, a cousin, everyone who loved this little girl, not knowing and just waiting all of these months, 7 months. I mean, that's not unheard of in a police investigation, but no doubt day after day, you have to ask yourself, is the person responsible going to get away with it? I mean, you watch enough TV shows and you see people get put behind bars after, look, before we finish the TV show, but even in the show, it's only about 24 hours, 48 hours before they find someone. 7 months, my heart breaks for them, but I hope that this at least helps them move to the next chapter. And, LAPD there explaining the reasoning behind it, not really giving us an exact answer though, Matt, on what is the evidence they were waiting on. Was there one thing that tipped the scale, one person, one witness who changed everything, or one report that came in that made the difference, or a totality of everything?
Yeah, they weren't very forthcoming early on. So, we have to believe that it was because they needed to solidify some facts or get some more information, or maybe with a witness or something like that, because it is really a long time. And it's very strange when you look at the timeline here, and from when he was arrested, from when her body was discovered, and all of the evidence that they either had or didn't have at that point in time that we've learned about. But, the other big breaking news within this past week, it's just been such a big week with this case, is the gruesome autopsy report. And I know that you shared that on your social media, and since you've been following this case, and the cause of death was finally revealed, right? To multiple penetrating injuries, and then cause of death, obviously homicide. But what was going through first off, it's just disgusting to think about all of this. So that she dies this very painful death, and then her body is chopped apart. It's just so gross to think about.
It's horrific. The details get worse and worse the more that information comes out. We already knew about decomposed, and I'm glad you had that timeline up, because two key dates there. She went missing in April of 2024, and then she's last seen a year later, April 23rd of 2025. So that's all this time that she was allegedly dating and kind of living with or being around the defendant in this case. Then there's a date that I didn't know about until the reporting after this press conference, and that's that May of 2025 is when they believe that she was actually killed. So that means between May of 2025 and September of 2025, that's when she would have been perhaps in these bags, perhaps in this trunk, and decomposing to an extent that the medical examiner took a while before they could even determine the cause of death. So it took them multiple months before they could even make that determination that you just mentioned, the multiple penetrating objects into her body causing her death. They didn't say stab wounds, so we really don't know. And it said object or objects. So we don't know if they have identified what instrument was used. But horrific to think about. I mean, and then the two bags in a Tesla. This Tesla is sitting out in front of that Hollywood Hills home. It's then moved. It's picked up by a tow company. And I don't think it's been answered, and correct me if I'm wrong, Matt, I don't think it's been answered how long that car was there, potentially with a body inside, if she died back in May of 2025.
Yeah, and was her body, so according to what I'm reading, the DA's office, prosecutors believe that she was dismembered a couple weeks after her murder. So where was the body at that point in time? Was it in the vehicle Was it taken out of the vehicle, put back in? Was one of his associates or someone that we don't know about just yet moving the car? Because I had heard local reporting that the car had moved around on the street. I'm surprised that it wasn't towed sooner, because parking there is very difficult to get. The neighbors there watch for parking spots and for people just dropping off cars. I'm really surprised that it wasn't towed sooner. And why wasn't the discovery made sooner once it's on the tow lot? I mean, I feel like I have more questions every time I learn something new about this story.
And I'm glad you mentioned, did he have help? Because that was a question to District Attorney Nathan Hochman about, are there other people, now that you have everything, now that you know all the information, now that you know that she was in this relationship with him that other people would have witnessed, are there going to be any other arrests for people who may have helped, who may have, I mean, you're not going to be able to arrest anyone for failure to report, but perhaps covering up something, obstructing justice. Are there going to be any other charges? And he would not confirm or deny that, but he said if it happens, you all will be the first to know. I highly doubt that, but that the public would know about it. But I think that still could be something. But you have prosecutors who are going to be leveraging that. These people could either be star witnesses for the prosecution via, we are going to arrest you and give you immunity, or it looks better to have a witness who does not have immunity, but just comes in as a good citizen and tells the truth. So that likely is the strategy that's happening behind the scenes with these witnesses, in getting all the information they can from them and prepping them for a potential trial. Because, the preliminary hearing could have witnesses, but they likely won't have a lot of lay witnesses. They'll have the law enforcement. They may have anyone who had, if there's some kind of DNA report or some kind of toxicology report that's very important to the case, but very technical, they may have that person. But preliminary hearings don't often have a lot of lay people unless they were eyewitnesses.
Yeah, and that's a great point. And, he's mentioned, Nathan Hochman, the district attorney, and the prosecutors were mentioning that they have a lot of digital and forensic evidence. So stay tuned for what that is revealed in stage one of the preliminary hearing. But I hark back to covering Lori Vallow Daybell and Chad Daybell when they were charged together. They were in court together. And initially, years before their trial even happened. And there were a lot of witnesses and a lot of details that we learned during that preliminary hearing. And I'm not really sure if they really do that in California. I don't think as much. And I'm thinking that maybe that's the reason why the judge didn't want for cameras today when the prelim was supposed to happen, because maybe he wants to... the judge wants to not deal with an issue of tainted jury pool or whatever the defense is going to say about that. But I'm hoping that we learn a lot more details in all of this, because again, there's just so many questions for this little girl. How did she end up in this situation, and what did they know? And is there an associate that may be getting a deal? And, when we cover trials together, and by the way, this is fun. You and I, covering news conferences and trials together, it's like old times. But the last one that we covered together over at Court TV, that I can think of, was the Corey Richins case. And there were a few people that were star witnesses, and they had deals, right? For their testimony, including the housekeeper that allegedly bought the drugs. But I guess we don't have to say allegedly anymore because Corey Richins is convicted. So the jury saw past that. So we might see something like that in this case, where someone's getting a sweet deal, but that's to, get the bigger fish.
I'm glad you mentioned Corey Richins, because that's another one of those cases that had a lengthy investigation, right? She went a year plus before she was actually arrested. And I think, though, that's good that the prosecution and the investigators have all been very thorough. It can sometimes, in some cases, signal that there's a lack of direct evidence. There's a lot of circumstantial evidence, and maybe not even a one piece of evidence that is the smoking gun, that they may not have that. They've really got to put a lot of things together. It may be more complex. You've got to see this digital evidence along with this witness to fill in the gaps. And once you put it all together with the motive and who else could it be, and that's what gets you to your probable cause, But not saying that they don't have more here and they just took their time, but sometimes that's what it signals and when we don't know the entire case. But I hope that cameras will be allowed into a trial if it happens. But I can understand why the judge may want to keep it out of the preliminary hearing at this stage, because especially if there is some level of child pornography involved, I think the judge is going to be even more careful about what is let out in this case.
Yeah, I hope so, because that's super sensitive and gross and all of that. And yeah, we just want justice, right? We want justice for the victim, no matter how we get there. And what does a trial look like for this guy if there's no plea deal, if he actually goes to trial? Again, we're dealing with the celebrity factor on this case. I think that it's likely that there will be cameras, if we've seen cameras until now. What does a trial look like? Does the celebrity factor help him or hurt him? Does his lyrics play into it as evidence? Can they? What are your thoughts?
Ooh, those are really great questions. Okay, I'm
They're
going to
both
take
big
them
questions,
separately.
too.
They are big questions. So we'll get back to lyrics in a second. But your viewers have been saying online in the chat that they don't know who he is. They didn't know who he was before this. So the celebrity factor, I don't think is necessarily his musical fame that's going to disqualify people. It's unfortunately the fame of, notoriety, I should say, of being at the center of this murder mystery for 7 months and dominating the news headlines there in LA and really across the country. So I think that factor is going to make it a little bit more difficult. But I do think that actually will help the prosecution seat fair and impartial jurors, because there will be people who have no idea about his music and maybe don't follow the breaking news as much. I mean, he's no Michael Jackson. I mean, who is? But
I was thinking about Michael Jackson. They found jurors in that case. They found jurors for Johnny Depp. They found jurors for Cardi B, which was recently in that courthouse. And then they also found there was jurors for Gwyneth Paltrow, right? Like the trial that you covered.
Well, those are civil. Those are a lot easier. But for a criminal case, death penalty will make it more difficult, like I mentioned. But I don't know that the fame that he had, in courtrooms, even though there's always a mix of age, jurors do tend to skew older. And I think perhaps older people are not as familiar with David, the singer, as perhaps the younger generation. He was getting that fame on TikTok, and a lot of younger generation folks, they're the ones who really know him.
That helps him, right, in terms of a defense, because if part of the special circumstances is killing for financial gain, they're going to be like, who is this guy anyway?
And the defense or the prosecution is going to have to show that there was this gain, but he did have a world tour that they say was about to happen and he was about to go on. So no doubt, if you're doing a world tour, there's got to be some money involved. And certainly he was getting recognition. I mean, he had millions of views on Spotify and platforms like that. So speaking of his musical career, some of the music videos that he had and the musical lyrics, I think, are going to be hot button motion in limine issues. The defense is going to have a lengthy motion in limine. That's just a fancy way of saying things they're telling the court about early that they want to keep out. And one of the songs that he had is called Body in a Trunk. I mean, if you're the defense attorney, there's not a worse song that he could make other than I killed my illegal girlfriend. Like that, there's nothing worse than Body in a Trunk for a song. So that the defense is going to argue that it's highly prejudicial, that the jury won't be able to look past it. I mean, we can't look past it. You and the two of us when we're covering it, because it's just so there's not even really a word for it, because by itself, it's this moody song that is, thriller mystery type genre. But when you have it in an actual murder trial, this is not a joke. This is not musical lyrics. This is there a propensity here? Is life imitating art or art imitating life? But I do think unless the prosecution is able to show something more of a link, as in what happens in this song and the music video where the body's being dragged. I think at one point it's in the music video, David himself is in the body bag or in the trunk. So it's kind of this play on,
And there's another song
himself.
where he's walking around, and the music videos are beautiful, by the way. They're very cinematic, but that's neither here nor there.
They're well edited. I will
Well
give you that.
edited. But then there's one where he has like a blindfold and he is near a car like you're talking about, and he has a suitcase, and then there's a cutaway of a knife. And
Is that romantic homicide?
I think so. Yeah, that's the other one.
Okay. We cannot make these names up.
No, and it reminds me of the case that we covered together in Oregon. I was filling in for you at the time, and you were the correspondent on the Nancy Brophy case. Yeah, and she was convicted. She was the author.
She was an author
that wrote a story about killing her husband.
And then she killed her husband. We can say that now, right? When we're reporting on it, we have to say she was allegedly, she's accused of killing her husband. But yeah, 10 ways to kill your husband. And
something like that. Yeah. And how to get away with it or something.
Mm-hmm. And they were able, I think that actually was kept out. If I remember correctly, the jury couldn't hear about it. So that goes to what could happen here. The defense could successfully argue that words like romantic homicide and body in a trunk could be kept out. But what about the song that he wrote that is called Celeste? Do you think that if he denies the relationship, I think legally there's an argument the prosecution can make that they're not using it to show that he had some kind of propensity for violence, but it shows that he did have knowledge of this was a relationship. It identifies the relationship, or that he had a motive because he was in this inappropriate relationship with her. So that one may come in, is definitely not as chilling as the other ones, the darker ones that he wrote. But, this is a big topic when it comes to trials against artists. Can their art be used against them as evidence? We see it a lot in sometimes the rap/gang trials. We saw it in the Young Thug trial in recent years. I covered that one in Atlanta, where they tried to use his musical lyrics to say, see, he said in this music that he wanted to kill someone, and part of this conspiracy is that someone died and he was involved in calling a hit. So the courts definitely have to balance that a lot when it comes to artists who are on trial.
Well, we're going to have to stay tuned for that, right? Like that's one of the unanswered questions if we even get to the trial phase, which it sounds like we're going to, because it sounds like he has a good defense team working for him. They're doing what they need to do, protecting his rights under the Constitution, because again, he is cloaked in the presumption of innocence, everyone watching at home. And the defense attorney did say this, let's be clear, the actual evidence in this case will show that David Burke did not murder Celeste Rivas Hernandez, and he was not the cause of her death, which I think obviously is worded very carefully and thoughtfully. But, we'll see how they perceive that and what happens next if we get to an opening statement, and then we can kind of get a window into their defense a little bit more, unless they happen to share something at the prelim, which they don't need to.
They don't know. But I wonder if they will say this is too obvious. Why would he be the one to put a body in his own trunk in front of a house that he was renting when he had a song like this? But that would mean he'd need to point the finger at someone else. He's not required to, obviously. The prosecution has proved their case. But I think that would be one of the only defenses that could work here.
Well, he was not the cause of her death. So then who is? And do they know who is?
And how did she get in your car?
Right. Who put her there? I think we're going to learn something big over the next couple of days. But you know what? To button this up, let's think about the victim and the family statement. They were searching for answers for how long? So the family, through their attorney, Patrick Steinfeld, wrote this: the Rivas Hernandez family is absolutely devastated by the findings contained in the medical examiner's report involving the horrible, and gruesome death of their beloved daughter. Went on to say these findings have caused profound emotional pain for the family. They respectfully ask for privacy. understanding, and patience as they process this information. I think we're all kind of processing it. It's just horrible. I can't imagine what they're thinking. I know that a lot of people have questions as to, could they have done more in the search? What was going on there? But at the end of the day, that little girl is gone. And I really hope that people think about her and really, as Vinny always said, hug the kids. It makes you really want to hug the kids in your life.
It really does. And it makes you want us to be able as a society to take some of these missing persons runaway cases more seriously. I think I saw that a lot when I was in local news, where you sometimes don't cover them all. Police can't investigate them all, especially once they get labeled runaway, unfortunately. I think this one could highlight some things. I would hope to see changes after something like this.
You're not wrong because, you're never wrong, but because the Hollywood Hills where she went, where his house was, is not easy to get to. And Riverside County, where she lived, is kind of far away. It's more than an hour, maybe. I grew up nearby Riverside County, so I know that. And then to get up to the hills, it's difficult. And if she's a runaway, does she have access to an Uber or a ride share? How is she getting up there? It's not easy. Who would have seen her? Had there been coverage of her missing persons case, would someone have recognized her? There's a lot of what ifs and Monday morning quarterbacking on this one, but I really do hope that it makes people view those cases differently, like what you're saying. You have such a good heart, my friend, and it's fun to do this with you and to talk about a case.
Absolutely. That's what we connect on, right? That's why we're friends.
Yeah. Well, we're friends. Well, we've actually known each other. I've known you longer than anybody else at Court TV. I was still working in Los Angeles, and I reached out to you, and I was just like, I love your work. I love Court TV. I love true crime. How can I be a part of that world? And you were just so kind to me, and we've been friends ever since, I think.
See, I could tell even then, though, Matt, that you were someone who was so dedicated to justice and victims and true crime. Like, I could already see it. I didn't even know you well, but I'm like, no, this guy's going to go far. We need to connect, and the rest is history.
So we're still staying connected, and despite all the changes at Court TV. But what are you up to right now? Are you enjoying your time off? Where can we catch you?
I have been enjoying my time off. I've been calling it my sabbatical because I've been taking it a little bit easy, but doing a lot of projects, some pro bono work, and just, been keeping in contact with people. It's been a wild ride. So people can keep up with me on Instagram, on Twitter, on Facebook. It's still Julia Court TV. I haven't been proactive enough to change it. I need to copy you and just do Julia Jenaé News, I think is yours. But I do have an announcement that I haven't made anywhere else yet, but I wanted to save it for Matt Johnson's podcast.
Okay.
Just that I incorporated my own media company, LLC, and I'm going to be filling in at our old shop at Court TV. So Vinny's going to be focusing on some VPI, some new shows. They've been running reruns for a while. So he's going to be working on those, and I'll be pitching in just like old times. And I'll get to see everyone 1 p.m. to 4 p.m. starting next week.
That'll be really fun. I'm so happy to see you back on the desk over there. And please tell everyone hi in the building.
I will.
It's such a cool studio space. And we are such a family. I always talk about it all the time here on my channel, that we're a true crime family, and we really are. And I miss you, and I miss everybody else, but I'm so happy for you. And congratulations on the media company.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Doing some consulting and just helping some young journalists, and looking forward to what is next. I've got to shout out our viewers, though. I know you know this better than anyone because they chime in. I'm one of your viewers on your podcast, so I see all the love and support that they give us. But they've been sending me some of the most encouraging messages. I mean, up until yesterday, I've been getting messages about how much they miss us. And I've left several shops, and I haven't gotten this kind of outpouring like I have for Court TV viewers. So they are definitely special people. It does not go unnoticed. Even if I don't respond, it's not that I didn't see the message. So I know you've been getting them as well, Matt. So just wanted to shout them out and thank them for that support.
Yeah, thank you, True Crime fam. Thanks for being here. Make sure that you hit the subscribe to this channel. Let me know if you want more chats like this with Court TV alum. We got to bring the family back together. I'm going to have your information, Julia, in the show notes as well, so that people can connect with you. Love you so much, and I hope to see you soon. Thank you so much.
Take care, Matt. Thanks for having me on.
Okay, bye, everybody.